Hi guys, welcome back to another episode Complex Like Wine, the podcast where we talk about complicated things and improve over time, just like wine does. So I'm actually really excited for this episode. We have our first international guest. She's all the way from Israel, and I'm going to read her bio. But before you can tell if you're watching, I'm in my PJs. I have bedtime tea because it is 11 p.m. at my time, but it's like 8 a.m. in your time.
It's 9 a.m.
9, yeah. So we had to figure out the time change for us, but no, I'm so excited for Tehilla to be here. So I'm going to read her bio really quickly. So she's a multifaceted entrepreneur weaving together a unique blend of experiences in business, wellness, and personal development. As the CEO of an access control company, a former Israeli national judo champion, training alongside Olympic medalist and IDF boot camp instructor, her drive, ambition, and leadership skills have been honed to empower and inspire others. In her transformative work as a homeopath, extrasensory, and business consultant, and founder of the bioorgonomy for business, Tehilla synergizes her extensive knowledge of Kabbalah. Is that correct? Kabbalah. Okay, thank you. Kabbalah spiritual practices, NLP, and internal material martial arts, offering a holistic approach that nurtures both personal well-being and business success. Guided by her passion for helping others, she assists clients in tapping into their higher selves, aligning personal wellness and business prosperity, and breaking consciousness and subconsciousness patterns holding them back. So, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
No, of course. No, so excited we have our first international guest. This is really cool. So, not just read your bio, but share a little bit more about your background, like especially national judo champion and all of that. That's really interesting. How did that come about?
Well, I started judo at the age of 5. And after one of my neighbors used to beat me up. So, and then I continued training until I became the national Israeli judo champion. I was the national Israeli judo champion for 7 years running. And then I was recruited to the army. Everyone in the Israelites required army service, women and men. I was recruited to the army as an elite athlete, which is a special program that the army provides for athletes so they can keep on training while they're doing their military service. And then I injured my knee, and unfortunately I had to quit, which was a huge thing for me, because doing judo from the age of 5, it was a huge part of my identity. And also as an individual athlete, I was focused on myself and my own success. And then I became a boot camp instructor for new male recruits in the Israeli army. There were new male recruits from difficult backgrounds. And it was a completely thankless job, and I had to do a huge shift in my consciousness and in my mindset from becoming someone who's only focused on their own success. I was actually giving my best and my whole to them and just focusing on their success and their well-being. And like I said, I was totally unappreciated by them, but I managed to do the shift from being someone who was very, like I said, say egocentric, to someone who was giving and was there to help others. So I'm very happy I managed to do that shift in a short time. It was very painful, but I managed to do it.
No, it's definitely very hard when you, like you said, when something's been your identity for basically your whole life, for it to switch in a way where it's out of your control. So I could imagine having to make that switch and then now putting that energy into others was initially really hard at the beginning.
Yeah, it was just like, I remember having a phone call with my ex-boyfriend. It was just the night of New Year's Eve. I think it was in 1998. And it was in 1999, and we were joking that 1998 judo champion, 1999 ex-judo champion. I made the shift over New Year's Eve between 1998 to 1999. And that's when I made that huge decision. It was a huge decision for me, but it was the best decision, one of the best decisions I've ever made. Because the way I see it, our life experiences, they help us bring out our talents and develop our unique skill set. Because we're all here in the world, the way I see it, for a reason. Our soul is here to develop, to do its unique journey, develop, and bring our special, unique light to the world. And all our life experiences, especially our challenges, and the environment that we're born with, and the environment that the people we meet later on, they're all actually there to push us in the direction for us to evolve and become the people we're supposed to become in order to do our mission and our calling in life. So the first stage for me was being a judo champion, and that built in me resilience, determination, self-discipline, and it made me very self-reliant, and it made me very strong. And once I completed my mission or completed my lesson there, that's when I could graduate to the next step and become focused on helping other people. And as I see it, as life brought challenges and as things change in my life, it just was all these changes just were there in order to, like you take a diamond and you polish it. So they just polished me more and more in order to become who I am today, which is also a stage in my development. It's not the end, as far as I see it, at least.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, going back to your bio. So, you're judo champion, now ex-judo champion. And earlier before we started recording, you're talking about how, your focus and everything, like your passion right now is kind of more the holistic focus and all that. Yeah, so I just want to know, how did you get into like all the homeopath, extrasensory, being a business consultant and all that? Like, what does that look like? How did you get into it?
Well, thankfully, my uncle, I said that nothing happens by chance. There's a reason why you were born to the family that you were born for. And my uncle is one of the top homeopaths in the world. So I've always been aware of homeopathy, and it's always interested me. So that's how I was introduced to homeopathy at a very young age. On the other hand, I was also very interested in business and making money. So when I after the army, I decided I'd take a trip to the Far East, as most Israelis do. They start traveling the world. And I remember that my cousins, when they were in the UK, when they were in high school, they had something that was called a work experience, which means that they spent 2 weeks in a workplace just experiencing the job. And I thought that was very smart because, we all have romantic ideas of how a job should look. I remember watching LA Law and thinking that lawyers had like the best, most life. And, but I think it's very, very important to experience a job before you choose a career because it's a huge decision. So I remember spending time in India with some Indian homeopath. I used to go there every day for a few weeks and experience that. And then I decided, because like I said, I was deliberating whether to choose the business studies or homeopathy. And then I bought merchandise in India, and I flew to London and I sold it in different markets in London. And then I went to another uncle of mine who was in Mallorca, and he did day trading. And so I experienced all these different things. I remember day trading, I used to do paper trading, on a piece of paper, as if I was selling or buying stocks. And even losing money on paper made me so stressed that I decided it's better for me to study homeopathy. Granted, I didn't get the full experiences, but for me, I decided I was going to study homeopathy. And I'm very happy I did that because, as I learned later in life, as I started doing businessing and entrepreneuring, that business is all about people. You have to understand business. You have to understand people in order to understand business. I remember meeting this diamond dealer, and he told me, listen, before I buy a diamond, I look at who's selling it. That's the most important thing. I don't look at the diamond, I look at who's selling it. It's the same as when you buy a used car. You look at at the owner of the car, you don't look at the car. So learning homeopathy, I actually learned spiritual principles. And these spiritual principles I found are true when it comes to abundance, to money, to managing your life. And once I employed these spiritual principles in business and into entrepreneuring, that's what led to success.
Before I'm going to ask you to list off the spiritual like principle practices, but before we get to that, I think that's really cool that you're saying your cousins UK, they you get like 2 weeks to experience. I because in the States we definitely don't have that. Nothing like that. So I think that would be so helpful to a lot of young adults, because especially during college when you're trying to figure out what you want to do. You commit to 4 years to a degree, and then sometimes by the time you graduate you realize you don't like it anymore and you want to switch. So I that's really awesome that you guys have that experience over there.
But no, but listen, that's what my cousins had in the UK. I didn't have that in Israel, but I just created it for myself. I think anyone before choosing a career or changing a career, I think the best thing would be to experience it for a while and to speak to the people who are actually doing it, who've been doing it. Not only to see, to go to college and see what the program is, and they can sell you all these ideas, which most people, in a lot of cases, people find that, like, what was it? My brother told me the other day. In theory, practice and theory are the same. In practice, they're totally different. So, so it's very important to differentiate practice from theory.
Yeah. Okay, so list off the spiritual practices that you mentioned, because I'm really curious to see what were the things that you started implementing in your life that were key, that made a big difference.
Okay, so I'll just tell you this. I've been in the field of counseling for 20 plus years. Okay, also in my capacity as a homeopath and as an extrasensory business consultant. And I found that people, regardless of where they come from, who they are, they all want four things, the same four things. Okay. And these four things are: they all want to be healthy, they all want to be loved and appreciated, they all want money. And most people from, the age of teenagers and above, they want to have a positive body image. Okay, they want to look good, they want to look fit, they want to look good on the Instagram. So these are the four things that people are very concerned about and are working on. However, from my experience, I see that most people are going about reaching these objectives the wrong way. And let me explain. When it comes to health, most people would take medication that creates dependency and only treats the symptoms and doesn't treat the underlying cause. When it comes to relationships, lots of people, instead of focusing on their own self-development, they adopt a victim mentality and start blaming the whole world for all their problems and get into these toxic relationships. When it comes to money, we have a saying in Israel that if you work too hard, you don't have time to make money. Okay? They work too hard and they lose the perspective, they lose the big picture. They don't think strategically. So they don't rise above, the grind of the day-to-day. And when it comes to body image and weight loss, that's why I see the biggest misconceptions, because all those yo-yo diets that people are doing. They start doing all these diets. They look at, they've got magnets on the fridge, that are holding up their diet plan. And they try, they fail, and these diets are usually slowing down their metabolism. And because they try and fail, they can't keep at it for a long enough time. Then their self-esteem also goes down, and they become frustrated and disappointed, and they get into this kind of cycle that's very destructive. And it's just like I tell the story. It's like, if you imagine a garden, okay, there was this beautiful garden in the old city of Jerusalem, and its owner was very, very proud of it. It had the most beautiful trees. It had orange trees and lemon trees and jasmine and lovely flowers, and all the birds and the bees used to come to this garden, and everyone who walked next to this garden used to stop and just enjoy the smell and the fragrance from the flowers and the trees. And one day, the owner of the garden started to notice that, the trees were losing their luster. There were no more birds. no more bees. The plants were dying, and he didn't know what to do. And this garden was literally his pride and joy. And he started looking for experts, and he started inviting experts from all over the world. So he invited an expert for the trees, who started building support to hold the trees up straight. And someone else started, trying to get the flowers, going, and put sugar water to attract the bees and the birds. But nothing really worked until one day a small boy came to visit with his father, and he asked his father, "Father, what's that pipe there? It's broken." And what they realized was that the water pipe had been broken. The garden wasn't receiving enough water, and that's why it dried out. And what I realized was that we're all gardens, and we all basically need water. Once they fixed the water pipe, the garden grew back. Everything grew back. Naturally, whatever was supposed to grow just grew. Once the water supply was renewed, the grass became greener, the flowers came back, the trees were strong, and then as a result, you have the birds, you've got the bees. The garden came back to itself. And why? Because the garden was reconnected to the source. We all have to be connected to the source. The source is what nurtures us and gives us life. That's once we connected to our own powers, that's when things change. Instead of taking a fragmented approach of all these different experts, we're just trying to plaster the situation. In homeopathy, that's what I do with homeopathy and with bioergonomy. We connect people back to the source, and then we see huge changes in their well-being and in their mental and emotional states. And not only that, once you're connected to the source, you're also aligned with abundance. You know how, you feel when you feel you're in the zone, that feeling?
Mm-hmm.
In the zone, everything's going, everything's flowing. Because you're in the zone, you're connected. That's part of being connected. You see, health, it's not just a physical state of not having any symptoms. Health is a perception, it's a mindset, it's a way of being. It's how we're meant to be. We're meant to be happy, we're meant to be thriving. Okay? And our health is reflected in our business. It's reflected in our bank account. It's reflected in our relationships. So what happens is when people are healthier, they're naturally aligned, their desires are naturally aligned with their needs. What does that mean? Do you know that, how isn't it strange that people that are diabetics, they want sugar? Or people who are addicted to something, they want the exact opposite of what's actually good for them, whether it's cigarettes, sugar, gambling. They know it's not good for them, but they can't help it. They're addicted. And why is that? Because their desires and needs are not aligned. There's a gap between what they need and between what they desire. And that's actually the state of being sick, being ill. However, when someone's healthy, he naturally desires what he needs. What does that mean? They don't have to look, if someone's healthy, he doesn't have to look on the fridge to see what he has to eat for breakfast. If he needs magnesium, he's naturally attracted to food which has magnesium in it, okay? If he needs iron, he's naturally attracted to iron-rich foods. So your body already, when you're healthy, your body already directs you to what you need. And also, the healthier you are, you choose better friends. You choose a work that's good for you. It's all about aligning your desires, your needs, and your desires. And that you can't force yourself to do that. Once you're connected to the source, that happens naturally. And that's how I see people lose weight and things work out for them, because it's actually effortless. The whole idea is that you don't have to make an effort once you're connected to the source. However, when you're not connected, that's when you're just like, you're like a hamster on a wheel. You're just trying and trying. We all know that feeling where you just feel it's all like an uphill battle. It's just because you're going at it the wrong way.
It's very relatable. There's times where I feel very disconnected mentally or physically with myself, and whether like I'm just exhausted or I feel like any of my efforts I have been trying to make aren't matching, aren't lining, versus the times where I think like in the zone where everything's just flowing smoothly. I feel healthy, rest, all that. So that is very relatable, and I totally understand what you're saying. What are ways that people could like start implementing to get more aligned with themselves in that sense? Like, what are some things day to day that they could start making switches to get there?
Listen, you can, I think first of all, I think I've been studying spirituality for the past 20 plus years. So I think that actually, first of all, it's a matter of awareness and mindset. Once you realize that life is not against you, it's actually for you, and and all the challenges are there in order to push you to make the right decisions. And sometimes, if you look back in your life, you'd see that there were times when you were pushed against the wall and you were forced to make a decision, which at the time was actually very difficult for you. For example, like when I had to quit judo, and it might have been a very, very painful decision, but in retrospect, I think we all have, those decisions that we were forced to make and that we realized they were the best thing for us. However, if we wouldn't have been pushed, against the wall, or a gun would have been held to our head, we would have not done that, and we just kept on procrastinating and, swimming in the same kind of mud that we had been doing up to that point. So I think if the earlier we recognize these points, or it's more like choosing change over being forced to make a change, that that's that can make my life, I think, much much easier, because reality is how we interpret it at the end of the day. So if we interpret a challenge or a difficulty as something that's pushing me to make a change, and it could be also something that's pushing you to ask for help, because sometimes it's very difficult to ask for help, and and sometimes people wait until they're almost on the brink, at the breaking point before they ask for help. And I think we weren't meant to be self-sufficient. The whole idea, we were created in a way that we have to be not dependent. It's called interdependent. That no one has all the answers within themselves. In a way you do, but some of the answers within yourself will direct you to ask for help from other people. So we're built in a way that we can't be self-sufficient. And the stronger we have, the stronger relationships we make, or the more we can trust other people, can it also be just one person to help us, that can make a huge shift in our lives.
I especially like 'cause my audience, like I told you before we started recording, no, 25 to 35, so kind of the Gen Z into millennial age. And especially during this time, I think if not all of us, majority of us at some point had to make a decision where we had the gun to the head or getting pushed on the wall, like being brought, shaken, forced to make a decision. I am just reflecting on me. I think I had to make some tough decisions very early this year. And in the moment you get frazzled and flustered because like why are you being forced in a situation to have to make a choice, and when you're not emotionally mentally prepared to. But it's kind of like the concept of you just surrender. And I like that you said it's the chance to make a choice is not like you're being forced. Like you get the opportunity to accept the change, not that you're being forced to face it. I like that you said that, because I think again that reframe and the mindset of, again, life is very unpredictable and things are gonna happen and go. But when you make the autonomy of like, well, I'm gonna accept what's coming and move forward with that in a positive, productive mindset, and I think that makes all the difference.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. It's about, look, we're here for a limited amount of time, okay? And it's just about making the most of it. You can either fight against life and sort of keep on, or you can sort of go with where your heart leads you. I'm not saying go with the flow and follow the herd. That's something that I don't advocate. But try to listen. Life sends you messages and signs all the time. is just try to listen. And instead of sort of trying to force things, like I could have, said, no, even though I've injured my knee, I'm going to keep on trying again and again. And by the way, the first time I injured my knee, I did a surgery and I got back, onto the mat. But the second time I injured my other knee, I was like, okay, this is a message. I'm not going to go through another surgery again. Maybe there's something I have to look at. So I think just taking that one pause and saying, maybe there's something I need to look at here. This is obviously happening for a reason. If you see that there's like a series of all these things that are happening, you just stop and ask yourself, what is happening here? Life is built on patterns. We all have patterns. That's what I do as a homeopath. One of the best things that I found to connect to the source is using homeopathy and bioergonomy, And when people tell me their life story, I always look for the pattern, and there always is a pattern. There's a pattern that goes through everyone's life. It's physical. It also appears in their physical symptoms, in their mental symptoms, and in their life story. They're patterns. We all operate in patterns, whether they're conscious or subconscious. And when I look for a homeopathic remedy, I look for a homeopathic remedy that's suitable for that person's pattern, in order to help him break up from that pattern. Because the patterns, whether they're subconscious or conscious, they're what's running our lives. They're actually managing us. They're the ones that dictate what we do. And the whole idea is breaking from patterns. So even if you don't know what the right choice is, just ask yourself, what is the pattern and how can I at least break the pattern?
I like that. Okay, and I'm curious. So, explain more on like homeopathy, how you go about it with your customers or clients, or even for yourself. Because I know you just mentioned like finding the patterns, but let's say you have a client coming in and they have done like traditional medicine or seen traditional doctors, but nothing's working, and they want to see a homeopathic doctor. How does that process look like?
Okay, so homeopathy has four main principles. Okay, the first one is treating the person as a whole. Okay, we look at the entire person. We don't just focus on the one symptom. We don't, just like you've got doctors who are eye doctors, and we focus on the person as a whole. We take into account all the physical, mental, and emotional symptoms. And not only that, we go into great detail. For example, someone can tell me, listen, I have a stomach ache. Okay, so I'd go into, when do you have a stomach ache? Is it after eating certain foods? At what time of the day does it happen? What dreams do you have? Do you like eating? What food preferences do you have? What food aversions do you have? We go into this a very large amount of detail in order to get to know the person. That's the second, as the person as a whole. And the second principle is individualization, meaning that we treat each person as an individual. I want to get to know you with all your special, unique attributes, in order to find the right remedy for you. Because 10 people can come to me and they're all wanting to lose weight, but each person is different. Okay, one person, has got a hormonal imbalance. Okay, and he's also got ADHD, and he likes eating carbs all day. Another person, is a workaholic, and he's got a huge stress, and he, likes drinking alcohol, and that's his thing. And someone else, so every person, 10 people will come and they've got ADHD or they want to lose weight, and each one will get a different remedy because we treat people as individuals. Okay, that's the second principle. The third principle is like cures like, which is basically homeopathic remedies in nature in general. Certain substances can create symptoms, and just like they can create the same symptoms, they can actually heal those symptoms. Okay, like for example, salt. It makes you retain water, right? If you eat too much salt, it makes you retain water. And I'm just giving a very simplistic example. And actually, we give a remedy from salt to people who are very, who are very retaining in their feelings. They don't share things. They hold everything in their stomach if they've gone through grief, but they don't like to talk about it. And So that's just a very simplistic example of how you see there's a correlation between the nature of the substance and the symptoms that people show. That's just a very minute pattern, just to, to give an example. And the fourth principle is minimal dose. We always try to give less than more. We don't, homeopathy doesn't create dependencies, it doesn't have side effects. And that's why I love it. It's a natural alternative holistic medicine.
I not to bash on the American doctors here, but I think um, they push a lot on, oh, let me prescribe this medicine. Oh, here, take this pill for to like alleviate your symptoms, or here's another prescription for this and that. During the pandemic, I became gluten free because I was dealing with. I've always had issues with my gut, and it took me a few years to finally be able to see a doctor just to kind of get an idea what's going on. And some of my friends that have been lucky enough to see a homeopathic doctor or kind of more of the holistic approach, I see such a they benefit so much from that experience, and any time I've heard them talk about their doctors, just been always so positive. So it's really interesting to hear kind of all the different four principles that you just mentioned. It's very different from, I think, the day-to-day doctor's approach, and so I really enjoyed that.
Totally. I always give this example, when, especially with mental symptoms, you know those old radios that had knobs? and when if the knob was off the station, if the dial was off the station, then you'd hear the static. Okay, so like I said, when we're not aligned, we've got all this static, right? We hear this horrible noise. And what I understand is if you treat the symptoms only, it's just like you're turning the volume down. Okay, you don't hear the static, but you don't hear anything else. However, if you connect back to the source, if you move the dial, right, and you connect it back to the station, to the channel, that's when you hear the beautiful music. Okay, so that's the difference between treating things symptomatically. It just kind of tones everything down. You don't feel the pain, but you don't feel the joy either. Okay. However, if you focus on connecting back to yourself, to the source, that's when you're aligned. And that's when you can hear the beautiful music of your soul, basically. And that can direct you to your calling, to choosing the right partner, to choosing the right career, to making the right choices on a daily basis of what you're going to do, what you're going to eat, whether you're going to exercise, how you're going to exercise. That's when you're connected, when your dial is connected, when it's on the station.
I also just really love that because no, when I think of homeopathic doctors, I'm thinking more kind of diet and exercise. I think,
So
but like realizing it's just so much more than that.
it's not only that, I've got this program. It's called Financial Freedom and Weight Loss. It's the effortless financial freedom and weightless 3-month program for business professionals. And it's a full money back guarantee. And why is that? The whole idea is that it's effortless. Okay. When people fight and try to go against their grain, they fight themselves, they're going to lose. It's whenever you're trying to treat symptoms, it's just like trying to put plasters and put the fires out, but you're not going to the source. It's only when you go to the source and you're connected, that's when things happen, and it's effortless. That's why I call it the effortless program, because I spoke to this woman yesterday, and she's been taking a homeopathic remedy for a month, and she used to eat so much. She said, "Listen, I used to eat, it was emotional eating." And she said, "Listen, I was at the wedding yesterday, and there was I ate the first and the main course, and then there was a party, and then at 2 o'clock in the morning they gave out hamburgers, and I love hamburgers." She said, "But I couldn't eat it. I just couldn't bring myself to eat it." And she said, "Normally I'd be eating it, but I just find that I just couldn't do it to myself." And it wasn't because, and it wasn't because she was like, I was holding myself and I managed to hold myself and I had the discipline of not eating it. She just didn't want it anymore. And that's why I say it's effortless.
Yeah, I really, this is very insightful because I haven't been able to have anybody on the podcast that focuses on this or much background or even my personal experience in my day to day to meet a doctor or anybody like this. So this is super insightful. I Oddly enough, I think, especially on my social medias within the past year, I've been seeing a lot more holistic, whether it's TikTokers, Instagrammers, kind of more videos, and just the little things they have suggested, I've tried implementing to my life of just kind of focusing on the not just covering the issue with a band-aid, but really looking into the deeper layer. And I can just tell what a huge difference it's made in my day-to-day life. And it's just a really amazing thing. So I'm so glad that you're here just talking about it with me.
Thank you. Listen, I think the reason that I work with business professionals is because I think once businesses are run with a spiritual consciousness, that's when we see the change in the mindset of the whole world. I think the whole world is going to a place where consciousness is rising, and the more people are aware of spirituality, basically that how someone told me it's not the tail that wags the dog, it's the dog that wags the tail, meaning that the world starts on a spiritual level and then it goes down and becomes more dense on the material level. So instead of trying to change things from below, you go to change things from above. It's like if you have a problem, you want to talk to the manager. You don't talk to the lowest employee, right? You want to go up to the CEO and change things. So when you address things on a holistic and spiritual level, that's when you can make the most change. Not when you're sort of digging in the trenches and trying to make changes from below. And that's why I like working with business professionals, because once they understand that what they do and their mindset and their choices have implicate their relationships within their work environment, and also aligning their personal goals with their business goals, all these things that need to be taken into account, that's when you see the money coming in. It's not just like, okay, instead of calling 20 people today, I'm going to call 30 people today. No, you've got to also, that said, you need to do that, but work smart, work from above downwards, plan it, see that everything, make sure that it was also spiritually aligned spiritually with abundance and with these principles, because you have these huge global companies, and basically if we want this world to become a better world, it's all about having long-term relationships and thinking not only of your selfish goals, also about the universe and in humanity as a whole. Okay, so the more you align yourself with these principles and with integrity, and when you work from a higher place, people will want to work with you, and these relationships will hold over time. History has shown that things that good relationships that last over time, whether, like I say, big businesses, at the end of the day, we all know that good always conquers evil. Even though it might seem like, now, like we are in a dark place, sometimes the light will always win ultimately. So you might as well be on the side of the light. If you can't beat them, join them. And that will make the world a better place.
It's so important since we're kind of talking about business and like the relationships and within that. I think it's so important that you're bringing it up because I think people get so stuck on that mindset of the grind where it gets very superficial, very surface level, and they view people as just like a transactionary obligation. Where instead of looking at them as a person, and like you said at the very beginning, where business is all about relationships. And at the end of the day, what type of business relationships are you wanting? You're going to want to work with somebody that, you have a good relationship with, or work with somebody that's just, a transaction to you. What's going to go farther in the long run? And so especially with people like my generation where, becoming young professionals, how do we start changing that workplace workplace environment to be more of a community focus and not just what am I going to get out of this? Kind of the whole thing of like givers versus takers. How can you give back to your business partner, your employee, whatever, versus just like, oh, what is it in for me? So I think it's really important that we're talking about that.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, I think life is all about win-win relationships, not only business, because relationships which aren't mutual, they're not strong. They can't hold over time. You can see also when you have, friendships where one person's just giving all the time and the other side's just receiving. Relationships, these aren't strong relationships. They won't hold. So only when you have win-win relationships, whether, like I say, personal relationships or business relationships, that's when you also enjoy them much more. They're much healthier, and also they're resilient. They stand the test of time.
You have that foundation built with your people, family, romantic, business. You have that foundation. So with your business now, what are some goals that you have for yourself, or what are some things that you hope to see in the future or down the road in terms of when it comes to the holistic approach to spirituality, to kind of the clients that you see or that you have? What are some positive goals or hopes that you have for the future in regards to that?
Well, I think that instead of when I was young, I wanted to change the whole world, as most young people do. And it was then and it was very frustrating at some point because I realized that I couldn't. And then I realized that, if I just do my job properly and help the people that are, that I meet with and come in contact with, God or the universe will take care of the rest. So it gave me a lot of peace. I was just like, okay. I think it's also like some of the arrogance of youth that you think you're going to change the world, but actually the world is made of so many different people and they all have different agendas, and not necessarily what you think is right for the world is exactly right for the world, and your idea of how the world should be is not exactly maybe the right idea. So like I say, I've realized that I'm going to focus on the people who are close to me, my family, my friends, my community, and the people that want my help. That's what I'm focusing on, just doing the best I can for the people that I have a relationship with.
I love that. That was beautiful. Is there anything else you would like to share with the audience or people listening that we haven't touched on yet?
I think that at the end of the day, I think it's important to keep in mind that we weren't put on this earth to suffer, okay? Although it might seem there might be painful moments, we were put here in order to grow and thrive, and it's all a matter of how reality is how you perceive it, okay? So it's how you interpret reality. So the more positive an interpretation you will give it, your life will be better.
I love that. Yeah, thank you again for taking the time to share that. That was really interesting to me because, again, I haven't been exposed to this topic very much at all. So I definitely know some people listening are going to find this really interesting as well.
Thank you. And I just, I just want to share now, people have a misconception about holistic medicine, that it doesn't bring results or that the results are very slow. And it's not. I've seen good results and I've seen fast results. And it's because I've been doing this for so many years that even in place when I offer a full money back guarantee. That's how confident I am in the results. So I just know if you find someone good, a holistic approach does work and it does bring results. And lots of people say, the spiritual thing, it's all airy-fairy, too woo-woo, it's not for me. And, most of my clients started out really skeptic, but they were open enough to give it a try, to give it a go. And once they saw results, like this woman, she came to me is just because the woman I was talking about who was, with the eating problem, I think she's a friend of hers for the past 2 years. Had been trying to get her to give me a ring and start treatment, and she was always like, "Nah, I don't think so. I don't believe in this sort of thing." And you don't have to believe in it. You just have to give it a try and do it. Results will come. But like Einstein said, that someone's crazy if they keep on doing the same thing and they expect different results. It's only when you do something different that's when you get different results. So by trying a completely different mindset, the holistic mindset, that's what I have seen brings great results.
It's just kind of like the mindset of like, just show up and just try. What's the worst that can happen? That if it doesn't work, it's already not working. So, but it doesn't hurt to just try a different approach just to see. And so I think that, yeah, that's great that you mentioned that the customers and clients you've had at the beginning, they might be kind of skeptical or resistant.
Yeah, they're all skeptical, and usually it starts like they bring maybe the child because he's got recurring ear infections, and they don't do surgery, and they're just desperate. They come because they're desperate. They've tried everything and they want to avoid surgery. And then when they start seeing results with their children, and it's not placebo because babies don't believe in what they're taking, right? That's when they start, then the mother comes and then the father comes and then you've got the whole family coming. It's just because they see results, nothing else. Because most of we're indoctrinated with conventional medicine. So conventional medicine is usually like the default choice that most people make, the herd. So it's only once people are, I've seen that, something's not working there, that's when they choose the other path. And usually that's where you see results, like you said, like with your friends.
Yeah, well, this was really great. Thank you again so much. And thank you for tuning in all the way from Israel. That's amazing.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I really enjoyed our conversation. And I hope this, helps people, just to make these changes. These it's not a difficult change, but it's a simple change, and it can change your entire life. You just take a holistic approach to things.
Yeah, it's for some people that, don't know, it can be kind of quote unquote scary or stuff because you don't know, but if you just give it a try and then you get to, like, I really loved how you shared the 4 principles and the 4 things that you focus on as a holistic doctor of just changing the mindset that the individual you're helping is an individual and a whole and not just someone that you just give a prescription to or something like that. So no, again, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation.
You're welcome. Me too.
Well, guys, I think I'm going to wrap it up here because we touched a lot of different things and this was super enlightening. Thank you again for listening to this week's episode. And thank you, Tehilla, for joining all the way from Israel. It's amazing. Guys, to listen in for next week. And if you're listening also, give it a rate, subscribe to it. That all really helps. So we'll see you in the next one.